Very cool. Very cool. He's a good guy. So as we're saying, we've set up this clash between titans. The Athenians have become stronger, 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 more powerful, and they actually weren't that afraid of the Persians. And we're going to see how this war is going to get to being. Now, I pressed the record button. It is finally gone. So let's go and see what happens. We've had our Ionian revolt, and Darius vows his revenge. So we're going to get to the first battle between the Greeks and the Persians. This is going to be the Battle of Marathon. Now, this is going to be hard for me because typically when I talk about battles, I like to draw on the board and I get like 10,000 times nerdier because I get into all of this military ancient battle stuff. So it's going to be hard for me. We'll see how this works. So 490. So it's 9 years after the Ionian revolts. We see back then things took time. All right. It took time to go and get this battle to go for the first battle of the war. And he sent 600 ships loaded with soldiers to invade Greece. Now, the Athenians find out about this, and they go to the other Greek city-states and say, hey, so the Persians, they're really mad that a couple of years ago we helped the Ionians out, we burned a temple down, nothing big, and they're coming to invade us. And the other Greek city-states are quaking in their boots. They are so afraid. And then Athens goes to Sparta and says, hey, Sparta, will you help us? You guys like war. And the Spartans say, we'll come after our religious festival is over. If we stop the middle of our festival, the gods will be really mad. The gods are mad at us, and things won't go well anyways. So we'll see you, a little bit later. So the Athenians stand alone for the Battle of Marathon. And so the Athenians have a big problem because Persians have gigantic army because it's an empire, and the Athenians, their army is not so big. So when we look at the numbers, we believe the Persians had over 20,000 soldiers. Now, in that army, they had chariots, they had archers, and they had foot soldiers. Gon, let's look at the screen maybe, bro. All right. So they had a very diverse, strong, powerful army. I mean, chariots were like ancient attack helicopters, essentially. Not because they flew in the air, but because they were stinking fast. And on the back of that chariot, we have Iker going and making people look like Swiss cheese, poking them with a spear. We've got Maddox on the back of that chariot shooting arrows, and Michael, the chariot driver, he'll just go run over people for Pete's sakes. So chariots, very dangerous. Archers, you should know what an archer is, bow and arrow. And then, of course, foot soldiers. Now, the Persian, and this is going to be a key point, the Persian foot soldiers were light infantry. And what that means is they didn't wear a lot of armor. Their armor was basically just clothing, like, their shirt, their pants. It wasn't thick. It was linen. And, they didn't have helmets. They would typically have a spear, and they might have a wicker shield. Wicker is, your family probably has wicker baskets somewhere like your moms do. Like that's where you have like I don't know, it's not quite wood, but it's like little like things weaved together, and then you throw stuff in it. That's wicker basket. Let's see. I'll just quickly wicker basket. That's what we say. Oh my goodness. It's like coming up with places that I could buy wicker baskets, and there we go. So here, these are wicker baskets. So their shields were made of this stuff. Do you think that's going to stop a sword, stop a shield, or a spear? I don't think so. So that was the Persian forces. Now the Greeks have less than 10,000. So the Persians have more than double the amount of soldiers. I've sometimes seen that the Greeks had like 7,000, 7,500. We don't know for certain. So the Greeks have less than half the amount of the Persians. And they only have infantry. They don't have horses. They don't have chariots. They don't have archers. They just have foot soldiers. But there's a difference between these foot soldiers here. See, the Greeks had what were called hoplites. And a hoplite is going to look like, why is this being so dumb? Ugh. Hoplites are going to look like this. You see, you got a bronze cuirass. Sometimes it would be leather, so they've got defense there. They've got shin guards. They've got a helmet. They've got a shield that's wooden but covered with typically bronze going over it. So, I mean, these guys, very formidable, all right? Dangerous. But they have less than half of them. So let's see what's going to happen with this. The Greeks realize the only chance that they have to win, the Athenians realize the only chance they have to win is to stop the Persians right here in the red. So the Greeks are blue, the Persians red, from being able to get into the open fields. Because if the Persians were out in the open, they could surround the Greeks and kill all of them, which would be a very bad thing for the Greeks. If the Persians could get out in the open, they could start riding their chariots and running over people and having Kadir make people look like Swiss cheese. So the Greeks say, we need to attack them as they unload their ships, so they can't even get off their boats, really. And so the Greeks go and meet at the plains of Marathon, but right near the water. And as we can see, we see a river going here, a river going there. So it confines the Persians to a small area. Because back then, people fought side by side. So you've got me, and normally I would line kids up at this time to make it more visual so you can see it. But you fought, you got that, and then you got the next person. So everyone is side by side. And only the people in the front two rows really can fight. Jason, who's in the back there, he's completely safe. His job is really just to push forward with his shield to keep the pressure going forward. All right? That's fine. So if you only are fighting in a narrow area, the Persians can't use their numbers. It doesn't matter that the Persians have 20,000. It wouldn't matter if they have 30,000 or 40,000 because they won't be able to use them. Yeah, you're safe for now, Jason. Wait till we get to Thermopylae. But anyways, and so the Athenians, they go and they fight in this narrow area. But then they have a plan. And we can kind of see it with these arrows here. So the Persians thought, okay, we're going to be able to easily defeat these Greeks because we have so many soldiers. And the Greeks say, we're going to let that Persian confidence get to them. So they put their strongest forces on the flanks. That means the sides. So over here are some of the strongest Greek forces. Over here are some of the strongest Greek forces. And they let the middle be a little weak. And so what happens is, and this is where I would normally be drawing on the board, the Persians push forward. They push forward, and the Greeks in the middle back up. But they're not backing up to go run away. They're backing up because as the Persians get further in, the sides of the Greeks go around. And we see this in the picture with the arrows. So the center backs up, and then the flanks go around. And what happens is the smaller Greek army actually surrounds the larger Persian army. And you see, that's when the disaster happens for the Persians. Because before long, the Persians who thought they were winning realized they were surrounded by the Greeks. And remember, the Greeks had that heavy armor. They had those heavy shields. And the Persians had basically no protection. Now, having little armor is great if you want to be fast and you're on a big open battlefield. You want to move around, zoom around, like Evelyn shoots an arrow at you and you get out of the way, that kind of stuff. But if you're stuck like a sardine and you don't have any armor, you're just waiting to get sliced and diced. So the Persians eventually run. And this is where the chaos happens. And we see that over in this picture. So the Persians start running. And there are stories of Persians running into the water, trying to climb onto the boats, and Athenians chopping their hands off so they fall back into the water. It becomes a complete and total massacre for the Persians. Because yes, see, this is how the Greeks fought. You see, it's this big block of people. It's so tough to get through. Now, you don't have to write these things. This is kind of what I just talked about there. Oops, I forgot that I had those right there. Now, so you need to know the word phalanx, and the phalanx is the way the Greeks fought. And we see with right here, you have the soldiers. They use their shields to not only protect themselves, but to protect the person next to them. So it becomes like this impenetrable barrier where, the Persians, there's nothing they can do. They can't break through those shields. And so from this, and with the spears going out, Herodotus says over 6,000 Persians were killed. The Athenians only lost 192. So over 6,000 Persians, they say, were killed, and only 192 Athenians were. And part of the thing is, with how the fighting was back then, typically not too many people died in the beginning of the fighting. It's when the one side ran away, because then their backs are to you, and then it's really easy to put a spear or a sword in someone's back. So when the Persians ran, this is when most of the carnage happens. And crazy thing. So the Spartans weren't like lying about having the religious festival. They really did want to be in the battle and help Greece fight against Persia. But so they finished up. Spartans, they come up the very next day. They're like, okay, so we're ready for this battle. And then the Athenians like, already won it. They're like, what? It's like, yeah. So the Athenians managed to pull off an amazing victory where by themselves they defeat the mighty Persian Empire. Now, this is a big deal, the Battle of Marathon, because the Battle of Marathon said that these Persians can be beaten. Because before this, people thought that the Persian Empire was like invincible. Nothing could stop them. And also what it does is it goes and says that, we might just have a chance to win this war. Democracy is it. Because one of the things is, remember, Persia was a monarchy. And so that means that, they had a king ruled by heredity. Hopefully you guys, remember that because that's in our song. But this is a big deal because historians often say, if the Persians beat the Athenians right here, democracy in Greece would have ended. And if democracy in Greece might have ended, maybe we wouldn't have our democracy here today. So that's why they put so much importance on this. That's why we take this time talking about this war and these battles here. Now, fun story. This is where we get the story of our very first marathon. Hopefully, when I said, hey, we're talking about the Battle of Marathon. Sometimes you guys popped in your heads, oh, a marathon, that's a race where they run 26.2 miles. And so that's what happens. So Phidippides, he winds up going and running back to Athens. We won. Actually, he was shouting, Nika, 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 which means victory. And so he gets there to the town square, says, victory, Nika, and then falls over and dies. So my mom, who likes to run marathons and like centuries, which are 100-mile races, she always says, you should run a marathon with me. I say, Mom, the first person who ran a marathon died. I don't think it's a good idea. So that's how we have the marathon today, though, to honor Phidippides and the victory at Marathon. Pretty cool fact, huh? All righty. So Darius is not happy. But Darius will not go and be able to get his revenge. Now, people in Greece breathed a sigh of relief. Not just the Athenians. All of the city-states were like, oh, man, Athens, that was so awesome. You guys beat the Greeks. Excuse me, you beat the Persians, because they were Greeks, I apologize. You beat the Persians. And some of the Greeks said, we don't have anything to worry about now. They are never, ever coming back because Athens kicked their booty so bad. But there were people in Athens who were like, I don't know. They might come back and it might be worse. So around the same time, the Athenians discover a new silver mine. And it's on an island, and it's basically on an Athenian colony, and there's a decision to be made. So now the silver mine here brought in a ton of money. And because Athens was a democracy, they had two ways that they thought they should do it. They said, we could either go give like $10,000. It was denarii, but we're like changing the money so something that we can understand. Like $10,000 to each family. Okay, that's a lot of money. Like if someone told your parents, hey, we can give you all $10,000, your parents would be jumping up and down for joy because that is a crazy amount of money. Okay. But Themistocles, the Greek leader at the time, says, Persia's coming back. We should buy boats. And, Kadir's like, we beat the Persians. We didn't need any boats. I want my $10,000. And Themistocles says, if the Persians come back, they're going to come back even stronger, and they're going to have lots of boats, and we don't have any boats. We need the boats. And eventually the Athenians go and vote to get the boats. Now, the way this happens is a little dishonest. Themistocles goes and says, okay, we need to buy the boats actually right away because there's this city-state, Argyle, and they're going to come and conquer us. They said, I heard that they really are mad at us and they want to conquer us. And then Khan's like, what? Someone's going to try to conquer us? Yeah, we need the boats. And like Themistocles is like, they're not really coming. And, Kyrstano's like, well, if they're going to attack us, we really need boats. And Jason goes, yeah, we should get the boats. And Danny says, and so they vote to get the boats, even though this whole danger was not real. It's because Themistocles knew the Persians were going to come back. And in 485, a new emperor, a new Shah, king of kings of Persia, takes the throne, and that is Xerxes. Now, Xerxes remembers how mad Darius was that the Greeks won the battle, those little puny Greek city-states defeating the mighty Persian Empire. And he says, I will get the revenge my father did not. So he goes and builds a bridge across the Hellespont. Now, the Hellespont, it's where the Sea of Marmara and the Aegean Sea meet. So it's the Straits of the Dardanelles Straits. And with that, he is going to go tie a bunch of boats together and put a little wicker road on top so his army can march from Asia to Europe. It saves a ton of time on the trip. He goes and says, I'm going to invade Greece. Now, a big storm comes. The seas are rocky and shaky and destroys this bridge. And this is where we talked about the story when we talked about Xerxes. He had his men go whip the water for not submitting. Now, we're actually going to leave it at here today. So we only got to Marathon and the eventual return of the Persians. We'll get to the Battle of Thermopylae next week because I feel like it does deserve some of its own time. And I forgot how much I love talking about Marathon. So we're going to stop it at there for today. I'm going to stop the recording. Oops, I pressed a button. I'm stopping the recording. Oh, yeah, that's we're showing exactly where the Hellespont is. And this is way zoomed in. Black Sea is up yonder, Aegean Sea over here. So right over there. Anyways, I'm going to stop the recording now for reals. Do we have any questions